I'm Marty Stauffer. Ever since returning to Noah's Ark with an olive branch, the dove has been considered a universal sign of good news and peace. For some, it holds a place of reverence. For others, its billing and cooing signifies true love. Although larger species, like the band-tailed, are called pigeons, they're members of the same family as doves, like this mourning dove. North America is home to 6 native wild species and 3 escaped domestic species of pigeons and doves. In meeting this gentle family, we'll have to deal with the irony that the most hunted of all birds are the birds of peace. As greening meadows advertise the onset of spring, the mourning doves return to our northern states to mate and raise their young. Everywhere, the sights and sounds of courtship fill the air. One of the most poignant rituals is performed by the mourning dove. Billing, cooing, and mutual preening are all part of a ceremony which establishes and strengthens their lifelong bond. Despite his soulful serenade, this young male has a lot to learn about the art of winning a mate. Once the doves pair up, the male goes to work collecting grass, roots, and twigs. With these materials, the female will build a simple, loosely woven nest. Mourning doves breed up to 5 times a year. Their multiple broods are a key to the success of their kind, especially since mortality for the young can exceed 70%. Widespread as well as prolific, they are one of the few birds which nest in all 48 states. The doves continue cooing to one another during nest building. a behavior that further strengthens the pair bond. The name mourning dove refers to their soft, mournful song. Another distinctive sound made by doves is the whistling of their wings in flight. Two healthy, though rather awkward-looking young, are the product of their labors. The responsibilities of parenthood are shared equally by male and female. 2 weeks after hatching, the fledglings are almost ready to leave the nest. Stationed nearby, the female awaits the male's return and then leaves. The male offers the brood a meal of regurgitated seeds. When newly hatched, the squabs were fed pigeon's milk, a curd-like substance shed from the lining of the adult's crop. Both sexes produce this crop milk, a unique ability within the animal kingdom. In suburban areas throughout our southern states, mourning doves can be seen feeding alongside their smaller cousin, the ground dove. At a distance, ground doves may look like miniature mourning doves. But up close, the scaled appearance of the ground dove's head and breast feathers is distinctive. There are other differences as well. The mourning dove has a small head, short neck, and a slender black bill. The ground dove's profile is much more compact, and its bill is orange tipped with black. This sparrow-sized bird is the smallest of North American doves. Most doves and pigeons are seed eaters. They also peck at sand and gravel. This grit is swallowed into their gizzard to aid in grinding the seeds for digestion. The Florida Keys are home to both the mourning dove and ground doves, as well as other less common members of the dove family. Here, the tropical vegetation and warm climate attract hordes of humans. Wildlife is also attracted to these Gulf Stream islands. The white-crowned pigeon nests in the Keys and nowhere else in the United States. Unlike their seed-eating cousins, these handsome pigeons eat mainly fruit. White-crowned pigeons depend on the small fruits of tropical trees, such as fig and poisonwood. Biologists fear that this specialized diet may cause the bird's demise in the Florida Keys. In clearing the land for development, much of the native vegetation is replaced with ornamental plants. As the native fruit trees disappear, so will the pigeons. For now, the white-crowned pigeons still find a refuge in the outlying mangrove islands, where they nest and roost. These islands are generally too low and wet to support fruit trees, so each day the island-hopping pigeons commute as much as 20 miles to the mainland to feed. For the winter, most of the pigeons migrate to distant islands in the West Indies. Some, however, remain in the Keys, adapting as best they can in the face of a rapidly changing landscape. The highly adaptable Eurasian collared dove is a non-native resident of the Keys. In the past 100 years, this dove has spread from India to Europe, to Africa, and now to North America. Its worldwide range expansion is equaled only by that of the cattle egret. Despite its name, the Key West quail dove is more common in the West Indies. Only occasionally does it stray into the lower Keys. The vast majority of pigeons and doves around the world inhabit tropical forests. Consequently, the southern portions of Texas and Florida support a greater diversity of species than the more temperate states. Along the lower Rio Grande in Texas, several Mexican species are found. The little Inca dove is as much at home at a backyard feeder or golf course as it is in mesquite thickets. In fact, this sociable dove seems to prefer man-made environments. To the early settlers crossing the desert southwest in search of water, the Inca dove's melancholy song sounded like the words, "No hope." The beautiful white-winged dove is another South American species which migrates to our southwestern states every spring. More gregarious than the mourning dove, white-winged doves feed and nest in enormous flocks. The seeds of sorghum and sunflowers are relished by these doves. Commercial farmers consider them a pest for raiding crop fields, but dove hunters, in hopes of attracting more birds, plant sunflower fields specifically for the hunting season. For those interested in observing doves and pigeons, Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge in Texas offers the best opportunities. More native species can be found here than anywhere else. Water is an essential element for dove habitat. They must drink at least once a day to soften the seeds they ingest. Their ability to drink without lifting their heads to swallow is very rare among birds. Mourning doves are almost as common at Santa Ana as white-winged doves. In the background, a white-tipped dove. Its white breast and belly distinguish it from the other doves. This species is the only solitary dove in North America. Even less common at Santa Ana is the red-billed pigeon, which rarely makes an appearance north of the Mexican border. The band-tailed pigeon is found in the rugged foothills and mountains of the Rockies and the Pacific coast. These birds have staged a dramatic comeback since the early 1900s when their population plummeted from overhunting. Huge flocks were slaughtered by hunters who sold their meat commercially. Their population has since recovered. However, a decrease in the West Coast population is causing renewed concern. The bandtail is the largest pigeon in North America, a virtual giant compared to the smallest of birds, the hummingbird. The bandtail can easily be distinguished from its cousin, the mourning dove. Besides the difference in size, there's also an obvious difference in the shape of their tails. The mourning dove has a long, pointed tail, while that of the band-tailed pigeon is square. A bobcat prowls nearby. On the ground, pigeons are much more vulnerable to predators and are therefore extremely cautious. Their safety lies not so much in numbers, but in rapid flight. With colorful neck feathers and a strong, soothing voice, a male tries to impress his mate. A pair usually raises only one offspring per year. Their reproductive rate is the lowest of all our doves and pigeons. By contrast, the extinct passenger pigeon was one of our most prolific birds. Experts say it was the most numerous bird species ever to have existed on Earth. Their legendary flocks, some 9 billion strong, accounted for at least a quarter of the total bird population in America. Incredibly, by the early 1900s, there was only one of these colorful pigeons left, a female named Martha, a sole survivor of ruthless overhunting and the felling of eastern forests. The passenger pigeon quickly perished with the onslaught of civilization. But the homing pigeon's coexistence with humans dates back 5,000 years, when they were first raised for food. Only the jungle fowl, the ancestor of today's chicken, has a longer history of domestication. The amazing homing instinct of these pigeons and their flight speeds of up to 70 miles per hour led to the popular sport of pigeon racing. Champion racers can earn up to $500,000 from one race alone. Numbered bands called countermarks are used to record the bird's flight time and distance. The racers are then crated and taken to a release site many miles away. Although they are the most intensively studied of all birds, their navigational skills are still not completely understood. Yet their ability to find their way home is so reliable, hospitals now use homing pigeons to transport blood samples to laboratories for quick analysis. These pigeons are also credited with saving thousands of lives during both world wars. Messenger bands, such as this one, were used to send information to Army outposts, alerting soldiers of the enemy's whereabouts. Once released, the birds circle to get their bearings, then fly straight home. In cities throughout the world, domesticated pigeons have escaped and found a suitable niche among man-made buildings. Their wild ancestor, the European rock dove, nested in caves and on sea cliffs. Urban environments provide similar types of nesting sites. With plenty of human handouts and a lack of natural predators, these city pigeons reproduce explosively. The nestlings engage in mock fencing contests. This ritualized behavior is used for both courtship and aggression displays. The sooner they master these skills, the better equipped they will be to compete for mates and nest sites. Regardless of efforts to control their numbers, city pigeons are with us to stay. Far from the bustling cities, the peaceful countryside belongs to the mourning dove. Each autumn, the mourning dove provides hunters with a bountiful harvest. In 36 states, 3 million hunters will bag approximately 45 million mourning doves. More doves are shot annually than all other game birds combined. Their speed on the wing makes them an elusive target. It often takes a dozen or more shots to kill one bird. Sportsmen spend more than $100 million during dove hunting season. And so dove meat, as delicious as it is, costs about $12 a pound. In spite of the great number taken, dove populations remain stable in most areas. In a few areas of the West where they are declining, a change in agricultural practices and not hunting are to blame. As grain fields fade to brown, the doves will seek greener pastures in the southern U.S. and in Mexico. With continued wise management, the mourning dove will remain a valuable and renewable resource. Silhouetted against the setting sun, a flock pauses for a rest before beginning their long journey south. The extinction of the passenger pigeon should remind us for all time that an animal's temporary abundance does not guarantee its survival. Today, fortunately, hunting laws are far more restrictive than they were a century ago. By improving game management and preserving critical habitat, we can correct the mistakes of the past and create a promising future for the inspiring birds of peace. I'm Marty Stauffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stauffer. Before dawn they come, haunting their ancestral grounds like ghosts of a time long past. Transforming the silent grasslands into an eerie symphony. Their rituals inspired the first humans who shared the prairie with them. In ceremonial dances, the Blackfoot, Shoshone, Sioux, and Cheyenne imitated the courtship displays of the prairie grouse. Let's journey out onto the plains and meet the sage grouse, prairie chicken, and sharp-tailed grouse. Dancers of the dawn. the greater prairie chicken clings to existence on remnants of native grassland. Each spring, the colorful males greet the sunrise with rhythmic dances and haunting songs, interspersed with chicken-like cackles. Prairie chicken cocks and hens gather on a traditional dancing ground called a lek. Up to 50 males may vie for the attention of the shy, drab hens. In their excitement and agitation, the cocks raise the pinnate feathers on their necks like little war bonnets. Forcing air in and out of drum-like neck membranes called tympanum, which are actually part of an enlarged esophagus, they produce strange melodic tones. It's like blowing air across the top of an empty bottle. During courtship, their bright yellow eyebrows, called ocular combs, grow more pronounced. Flutter jumping is another method the colorful cocks use to attract a hen. A male's position in the middle of the lek is thought to be another key to his breeding success. Jousting for one of these central positions often results in short, violent skirmishes. Finally, a hen makes her selection. Yet even in mid-copulation, a cock's breeding rights may be challenged. After fertilization, the hen shakes or rousts her feathers. Then she'll desert the lek to find a suitable nest site. The lesser prairie chicken is almost identical in appearance to its slightly larger relative. Its neck sacs are a little smaller, but its ocular combs and pinnate feathers are proportionately larger than the greater prairie chicken. Today, the lesser prairie chicken lives in only 5 states. Here, on isolated sections of shortgrass prairie in the southern Great Plains, they gather on their springtime dancing grounds. Fighting is intense. With pinnate feathers flared, the cocks face off. Though spurring will occasionally dislodge feathers, most contact is relatively harmless. In centuries past, vast herds of bison shared this arid land. Now domestic cattle graze the fragile native grasses so critical to this bird's survival. Light to moderately grazed lands will still support grouse, but on overgrazed areas, these colorful little dancers are not to be found. The hens in particular need lush grass of a mixed variety for successful nesting. If the lesser prairie chicken is to endure, at least 50% of its habitat must be left unchanged. Farther to the north, from mid-Colorado to the Alaskan tundra, lives the sharp-tailed grouse. Unlike the square-tailed prairie chicken, the sharp-tail, true to its name, has a narrow, pointed tail and is the most talented dancer of all. Feet flying, they pirouette around the lek, rattling their tails and cooing. With outstretched wings, sharp-tailed cocks maneuver like miniature jets, taxiing for dominant positions on the lek. Even in slow motion, their rapid dance is almost a blur. During the fever pitch of courtship, cockfights are frequent and ferocious. The feathers along a sharp-tail's back are thick like armor plating. Aerial hunters like falcons have a difficult time penetrating this layer of protective plumage. The slowest dancer of the grouse family is the handsome sage grouse of the high plains. Their size and design make their display especially magnificent. Greenish-yellow air sacs bulge, pulsate, and pop. 20 spotted tail feathers fan like a majestic Indian headdress. Elongated filiplumes along the neck flutter in the sage-scented early morning breeze. Battles for the hens consist of shoving and wing beating. In the end, the majority of the females mate with the most dominant cock. In slow motion, the intricate pattern of air sac inflation is one of the most amazing sights in all of nature. Because sage grouse have no muscular gizzard, they're limited to foraging on soft food like sagebrush. In fall and winter, hardy sagebrush bushes, which are evergreen, may supply virtually 100% of the sage grouse's diet. Farming and ranching practices have resulted in widespread destruction of sagebrush, which has caused a corresponding decline in sage grouse populations. By mid-morning, the flock has flown off to feed, leaving a master cock and his hen alone on the lek. America's first people experienced grouse in numbers we can scarcely imagine today. They were so impressed with the dancing birds that the movements were incorporated into tribal ceremonies. The Sioux beautifully translated grouse ritual into the prairie chicken dance.
These winter counts are paintings of events of the past years. They're like history books of our people. Along with the buffalo, our ancestors hunted birds like prairie chickens and crane. To hunt a prairie chicken, one must leave before sunrise. Then he must do it very carefully.
The ingenious use of every part of the buffalo by the Plains Indians is legendary. But a diet of mostly buffalo meat could grow tiresome, and a dinner of tender grouse was a welcome change of pace. The brave tells his family of a grouse lek nearby. The word is quickly passed through the small encampment.
Aloha. Dona shio. Washte. Inakni.
Shio, Lucella. Maya inistima lena iwatu.
Warriors of the future had to start somewhere. Hunting for a prairie chicken nest might have been a young Sioux's introduction to subsistence living on the wide, unbroken prairie. Prairie chicken hens which lose their first clutch of eggs will re-nest, and before the end of spring, lay another batch of olive eggs blotched with brown. Often, at the end of the day, young aspiring Sioux were told not of buffalo, but of grouse. For an Indian child, like children the world over, it was a time to let the imagination take flight.
This feather on my arrow is from a flyer. We've used the feathers other things we get from the flyers and our way of life. We use feathers from other birds, such as the eagle, for our dance costumes. And we follow the movements of the prairie chicken. Our head movements and our feet movements and our dance patterns come from the prairie chicken. When my people do the dance of the prairie chicken, then they become the same as the grouse.
The Indians enjoyed telling stories about the animals around them. In one tale that's a lot like an Aesop's fable, a group of prairie chickens meet up with a tricky coyote.
The tricky coyote was hungry, so he was traveling along the creek. When up on a hill, he seen some prairie chickens dancing. So he took his bag of tricks and went up that way. When he got there, grandmother prairie chicken didn't trust him, so she asked him what he was doing there. He told her that he had magic songs in the bag. Use these magic songs, they'd be better dancers. Let's Tricky coyote finally got mother prairie chicken to dance, her eyes shut with the rest of them. And as they were dancing, he was grabbing them one by one and putting them in his bag. When grandmother prairie chicken seen this, she warned the others and she flew away. Today, the coyote can't trick the prairie chickens that way anymore. And all little boys shouldn't believe what someone has to tell them.
It might seem easy to prey on prairie chickens at this time of the year, when they're distracted with displaying and breeding. But the leks are usually surrounded only by low vegetation, and they're located on high ground with a 360-degree view. The lightning reflexes of the bobcat are no match for the quickness of the wary grouse. Even in late spring, the many prairie ponds may be covered with ice for a few hours after sunup. For a lesser prairie chicken, the ice poses a perplexing problem. High in the sky, a peregrine falcon scans the ground below for prey. the falcon circles, and the prairie chickens flock together. The peregrine shoots down like an arrow, and the grouse flush. No bird is faster in a dive than the peregrine, but millions of years of evolution have made the grouse even faster in level flight. Summer. Thunderstorms are frequent on the prairie. While the rains enrich the native grasses, they pose a threat to the unhatched young of a nesting greater prairie chicken hen. Through rain or even snow, she will endure. The future of her kind depends on her. For 3 weeks, she will patiently incubate the eggs, motionless and stoic. Habitat is particularly critical now during nesting season. Large tracts of undisturbed prairie are crucial for concealment of a nest. On the 23rd to 25th day, new life struggles to emerge. Broods of 5 to 12 chicks will hatch in good years. Camouflaged with spotted down, the tiny chicks will be ready to follow their mother within hours. If all goes well, they will survive to take their place on the prairie. And one morning, rising to a grassy knoll, they will become dancers of the dawn. I'm Marty Stauffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stauffer. Some of our most distinctive birds are found in the family of quail. In their delightful calls, their elegant coloration, and their value to man, everything about them is attractive. The bobwhite is the most numerous and most widely distributed, and since it's the only quail found in the eastern half of our country, many think of it as the only one we have. But 5 other unique species live in scattered areas of the west and southwest. The members of this family reach the highest level of avian beauty, for few other birds are pretty as a quail. A familiar whistle echoes across the quiet countryside. The characteristic calling of one of America's best-loved birds. For most of the year, bobwhite travel in social units called coveys, usually 10 to 20 birds, and no more than 30. The male bobwhite calls for a mate, then listens hopefully for the sweet reply of the buff-colored hen. Of all our native quail, none have more vocalizations than the bobwhite. No less than 24 separate calls communicate a variety of messages. Continuous communication holds the group together as the birds forage or take an occasional dust bath. As the early colonists moved westward, opening the dense woodlands for small family farms, the bobwhite followed. In a diverse habitat of weedy hedgerows, cultivated fields, and shady forest glens, their numbers grew to record proportions. The bobwhite is well known as the farmer's best friend, feeding on crop-damaging insects and weed seeds. Only in spring, the breeding season, does the normally harmonious bobwhite covey grow restless. Because males outnumber females, competition for hens can be intense. Although duels to the death are not unheard of, most clashes are brief and bloodless. Like all members of the quail family, the bobwhite is primarily monogamous. Once mated, the male and female bobwhite are inseparable. Several weeks after breeding, the male and female will go off to nest, sometimes in close proximity to other pairs. The covey is essential to the survival of the ground-roosting bobwhite. In the evening, the group crowds together in a tight circle. Like the spokes of a wheel, their heads radiate outward. Each bird in the roosting ring lifts its wings slightly to form an unbroken circle. This allows for the transfer of body heat. With all eyes facing outward, the bobwhite covey has a 360-degree view of approaching danger. The explosive burst of the covey surprises the bobcat. Wings whirring in all directions leave the predator indecisive. Meanwhile, the quail have flown less than 200 yards away. A comeback call is used to reassemble the covey. They huddle again in their defensive formation. The simultaneous flushing behavior is what also makes the bobwhite a challenging quarry for human hunters. North America is home to 6 species of quail, the only members of the pheasant family native to the Western Hemisphere. The bobwhite, standing about 10 inches tall, is best known. It's found mainly in the eastern half of the United States, from Canada to the Gulf Coast. Now an endangered species, the closely related masked bobwhite was once widespread in a narrow strip of southern Arizona along the Mexican border. The scaled quail is still found in relative abundance in arid landscapes. It lives from southern Colorado and southwest Kansas west to central Arizona and south into Mexico. The Gambel's quail is another beautiful resident of our southwest deserts. This plumed quail is closely related to the California quail. California, or valley quail, live in a variety of habitats, from the semi-arid desert brushland of Southern California to the damp, craggy coastline of Oregon. At nearly 12 inches, the striking mountain quail is the largest. It lives in western coastal ranges as well as the Sierra Nevada, from 1,500 feet to timberline in summer. The shy Montezuma quail is found in grassy canyons and on mountain slopes of our southwest. The chunky Montezuma, or harlequin quail as it's sometimes called, is the smallest of the quail family, at only 8 inches tall. Many consider it the most colorful and comical, with its clown face and bushy, helmet-like crest. The female is duller and lacks the strong facial pattern of the male. This quail has large, heavily clawed feet for unearthing bulbs and roots. In summer, insects, like beetles and caterpillars, are the mainstay of its diet. The range of the Montezuma once overlapped that of the masked bobwhite. Overgrazing and several years of severe drought left the masked bobwhite without a home. By the turn of the century, it had disappeared from Arizona, though remnant populations remained in Mexico. In 1967, the masked bobwhite was officially listed as endangered. Since that time, wildlife professionals have worked to secure a safe haven for the birds and have tried some unusual and creative techniques for reintroduction. Sterilized common bobwhite are being released along with the masked bobwhite, in hopes that, if a masked parent dies, the common bobwhite will take over as surrogate parent to incubate the eggs and rear the chicks. The plan appears to be working. A few birds have survived and raised their own chicks on this unique Arizona refuge. In the tall grass of a country meadow, a bobwhite cock has constructed a shallow nest and lined it with grass. Over the course of several weeks, his mate has laid a dozen small white eggs, one egg at a time. The hen gently turns the eggs and is careful to keep them close together. A few days before hatching, an unborn chick makes a tiny pinhole opening in its egg and begins breathing with its lungs. It also starts making a nearly inaudible clicking noise, as many as 80 to 150 clicks per minute. It's theorized that chicks within eggs that are close together can hear each other's clicks, and this stimulates them to break into the world at almost the same moment, a phenomenon called synchronized hatching. More than 3 weeks have passed since the parents began patiently incubating the eggs. Then, within hours, the chicks all hatch. Even before their down has dried, the rambunctious bobwhite babies are investigating their world. Quail mature as fast as any bird in the world. They begin foraging almost immediately. Sometimes a chick's eyes are too big for its stomach. They have no time to lose because the life of a bobwhite is fleeting, just 8 months on average. Only 20% live to see their second summer. Far to the west, a new day is breaking in New Mexico. The cheerful call of the Gambel's quail floats across an arid landscape. Newly hatched chicks and their parents trek to a familiar water hole in the early morning hours. Large groups regularly gather to drink before feeding. Gambel's quail live year-round in tangled brush along creeks and ravines, thick and thorny places where they feed on weed seeds, berries, and the fruit of the cholla, prickly pear, and barrel cacti. Unruly tufts of head feathers on the little chicks will grow into the elegant plumes which characterize both sexes of adult Gambels. Like most quail which live in dry areas, Gambels can often be seen dust bathing, a form of dry cleaning their feathers to rid them of excess oil and parasites. The colorful male Gambels has the appropriate nickname of redhead, for a rusty red crown, punctuated with a dramatic question mark-shaped plume. The cock's black face and crown are outlined in white. The black patch on his unscaled belly is another good way to distinguish him from the California quail. The male California quail has a gray forehead and a smaller rusty crown, but the plumes of both male and female are nearly identical to the Gambel's. A covey begins to forage an hour or two after sunrise and several hours before sunset. The California quail is mostly vegetarian. It eats seeds, buds, leaves, acorns, and wild berries, but few insects. In the late 1800s, market hunters, lying in wait by watering holes, bagged thousands of birds. They were paid $1 per dozen birds, and as many as 100,000 were killed in 1 year to supply the tables of San Francisco and Los Angeles. By the turn of the century, hunting tapered off as quail numbers plummeted. But the beautiful birds have made a comeback. The loud, clear call of the California quail is fairly common again in much of the state. Among ponderosa pine in the high country of the Sierras, a covey of mountain quail has begun to forage. The largest of our native species, at nearly half a pound, the mountain quail may also be our most beautiful. The alert male carries his long, straight plumes erect. His rich mahogany throat is bordered with white, and his flanks are dramatically striped. Mountain quail roam over large areas to feed on seeds and bulbs, flowers, fruits, and insects. The cautious birds are difficult to hunt because they rarely fly, choosing instead to make a run for it. In the fall, they migrate down from the mountains, sometimes marching in orderly single file for up to 40 miles, to winter in sheltered, snow-free valleys. Their vertical migration ranks as one of the shortest of all migratory birds, but among North American quail, they're the only species which migrates at all. On a sunny alpine ridge in early summer, thoughts of winter migration are far away. A hen is preparing to incubate her clutch of eggs. Her nest is a slight depression scraped in the ground and lined with a few dry leaves, pine needles, and grass. In about 3 weeks, if all goes well, mountain quail chicks will emerge into their high country home. To the east of the Rocky Mountains, the scaled quail is scratching out an existence on the plains of southeastern Colorado. Near the protection of a cholla cactus, a covey forages for insects. The semi-arid range of the scaled quail can be as dry and inhospitable as any quail habitat in the country. But it seems to suit the swift and wily blue racers, as they're sometimes called. Blue because of the bluish-gray cast of their back and wings, and racers because these fleet-footed quail are more likely to run from danger than any of their quail cousins. Scaled quail are also called cotton tops for their fluffy white crests. Belly and breast feathers are rimmed with black and give their plumage a shingled or scaled effect. Predators abound in the scrubby arroyos and ravines of scaled quail country. Even the cat-like agility of the swift fox is no match for the cottontops, elusive members of our elegant family of American quail. Birds of great beauty are often greatly hunted, and quail are no exception. Fortunately, these cheerful creatures are prolific and have been aided by the clearing of land for agriculture. In return, quail benefit farmers by eating weed seeds and insects, so they're as helpful as they are handsome. All birds fascinate me, but I can think of few that are pretty as a quail. I'm Marty Stauffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stauffer. What bird has ears in front of its eyes and an upside-down brain? Which is classified as a shorebird, even though it inhabits upland meadows and woods? And what bird has dozens of names, such as bog sucker, mud bat, and timberdoodle? It's all the same bird. And it's also the world's slowest flyer, the American woodcock. This beautifully strange creature, with its unique courtship flights, still has scientists puzzled by its migratory behavior. Though widely distributed, woodcocks are especially drawn to certain areas along the scenic coast of Maine. Let's travel to the eastern tip of North America to meet some unforgettable eccentrics, timberdoodles of Moosehorn. The state of Maine is not only a geographical location, but a way of life. It's a way of life that harmonizes well with nature. Along the coast, rustic fishing villages blend with scenic natural harbors. Traditional lifestyles continue to depend upon the natural bounty of the sea. Natural beauty has also been preserved in Maine, in such places as Acadia National Park. The only national park in the Northeast, Acadia's 39,000 acres are centered around Mount Cadillac, the highest point on the eastern seaboard. Many types of native wildlife thrive in Acadia. Canada geese breed here, and beaver are often seen going about their business. Also found here is the largest member of the deer family. Moose were once common in Maine, but almost disappeared due to human pressures. Now they're making a comeback. A bull moose may weigh over 1,000 pounds, and even a cow can stand 6 feet high at the shoulder. Graceful, despite its ungainly appearance, the moose is a living symbol of Maine's wilderness. The most northeastern of all states, the Pine Tree State is also one of the wildest. It contains the most northeastern national park, Acadia, and the most northeastern national wildlife refuge, Moosehorn. Actually, moose don't have horns. They grow antlers, and Moosehorn has only a very small moose population. More commonly found here are several fascinating birds. One is the ruffed grouse. Another is the primary reason for the establishment of Moosehorn as a refuge, the American woodcock. It's known by nicknames as quaint as its appearance. Of these, timberdoodle is the most common. A round body, stubby tail, and short legs make the bird seem almost clownish, but its comical features serve a purpose. Large eyes, set high on its head, enable the woodcock to see in a complete circle without moving. In most bird species, the ears are behind the eyes. The ears of the woodcock are below and slightly in front of its large eyes. Because its eyes and ears have taken up so much room, the timberdoodle has evolved a unique brain. It's in a backward and upside down position. The woodcock is the world's slowest flyer. Cruising at 5 miles an hour makes it possible to zigzag through the thickest brush. But the timberdoodle spends most of its time on the ground, which is where it finds its food. Damp thickets with rich leafy soil are the preferred habitat. Ideal conditions for earthworms, the main item in the woodcock's diet. After a spring rain, a bird may be lucky enough to find 2 earthworms bonded together in the act of mating. In this case, the meal will be a double bonus. Its slender bill is almost 3 inches long. The tip of the upper bill is flexible and has sensitive nerve endings which enable the woodcock to literally feel around for its prey. On a good day, the woodcock will eat its own weight in worms. Since it spends so much time probing, another of its nicknames is mudsucker. During their early spring courtship season, timberdoodles are most active at dawn and dusk and on nights with a full moon. Among the creatures that prey upon them are other birds, such as this great horned owl. But the timberdoodle is not an easy target. It may be the world's slowest flying bird, but it can also be very fast. When the ground has thawed, woodcocks migrate north, and the male begins one of the most fascinating courtship displays of any bird. Claiming a spot called a singing ground, it makes an insect-like sound called a peent before suddenly bursting into the air. Flying up 200 or 300 feet, it then spirals down like a falling leaf, making a series of liquid chirps to attract the attention of females below. This flight is repeated many times each day at dawn and dusk. Sometimes, two males perform rival flights over the same territory, calling out harshly at one another. This twittering sound had observers puzzled for many years, until it was discovered to be the wind whistling through their primary feathers. The cock's effort will usually be rewarded by a receptive hen. Since timberdoodles are polygamous, a male may attract and mate with several females during the course of the display period. As spring turns to summer, the timberdoodle hen lays 4 speckled eggs in a shallow nest. She alone will incubate the eggs for the 21 days it takes them to hatch. When she leaves the nest to feed, the eggs are as well hidden by their coloration as she is by hers. Yet there's always the chance that while she's gone, some of them might fall prey to snakes, rodents, or other birds. The hen returns to continue incubation. By being away for only short periods of time, she's able to keep the eggs at a uniform temperature. The omnivorous black bear can also be a threat. The young are especially vulnerable when they're in the process of hatching. The hen flies up in an attempt to distract the bears. Risking her own life, she lands close by and flutters about as if helpless. This attracts the attention of the bears toward her and away from her helpless young. The hen returns to the nest to find one chick almost dry and hiding in the grass a few inches away. The hen usually lays one egg a day for 4 days. Still, they will all hatch at nearly the same time and be able to leave the nest together. In some species, the babies hatch naked and helpless. But timberdoodle chicks, like most game birds, are precocious, hatching out fully feathered, wide-eyed, and ready to explore their new world. Nevertheless, instinct tells this chick to stay close to its mother. Surprisingly, the clearing of land can actually have a beneficial effect on woodcock populations. At Moosehorn, habitat for woodcock is maintained by cutting trees when they grow too old or too tall. Though the woodcock is classified as a shorebird, it prefers an upland combination of thin woods and open meadows. As the only national wildlife refuge devoted primarily to the woodcock, Moosehorn supports many research programs. Dogs are often used to hunt woodcock. Biologists also find them invaluable. This English setter freezes and points at the bird's location. The dog locates a woodcock by sense of smell. A man might almost step on one and never even know it was there. The timberdoodle is practically invisible in its amazing camouflage coloration. Thanks to the dog, the bird can be netted. This hen with chicks will be very useful to their studies. The bird is picked up carefully and then inspected to determine its health. Measurements are taken which, when added to other statistics, will give a clear picture of how moosehorn timberdoodles are faring in comparison with other populations. The female timberdoodle is given a numbered leg band. It will identify her anywhere along her migration route. While one biologist keeps the hen calm, the other unwraps a new radio transmitting device designed especially for woodcock. The tiny, lightweight transmitter is fastened around the bird's body. The device will enable biologists to keep track of the hen without interfering with their activities. The signal emitted by the transmitter is inaudible to the bird. The chicks that were hidden beneath the female are also carefully removed. They too are given leg bands that will identify them for life. They can live as long as 8 years, but most never make it past the age of 2. Except for a few ruffled feathers, the hen looks none the worse for her experience. And the chicks also seem not to notice their tiny burden. Despite the interruption, the woodcock family is soon back to normal. The chicks are rapidly developing primary wing feathers and will fly within 2 weeks after hatching. Like the adult, the young instinctively know how to probe for worms. But the mother's care and protection is needed for at least the first month. There are several reports of a hen carrying her chicks one at a time to safety by flying with them held between her legs. Her dangling legs and drooping tail might look that way, but there's little evidence to support these sightings. Within about 50 days of hatching, each member of the brood will go its separate way. But for now, staying together is important. As summer comes to an end, the researchers locate the timberdoodles at night as they roost in open blueberry fields. Using a mobile radio receiver, researchers are able to track signals transmitted from birds captured earlier in the year. Blinded by the light, this timberdoodle seems confused about which way to turn. Once again, the net falls. The young bird is identified by its band number. Its sex, in this case a female, is determined by the shape of its primary flight feathers.
Got pretty good development on the primaries. Probably why it's so hard to catch.
After the bird is studied and admired, it's set free once again. The information which is gathered will be used to improve the future of woodcock populations, both in Maine and elsewhere. The autumn sun rises over a land chilled by morning mist. But if the days are crisp, so are the bright colors of early fall. The trees change color before the lakes and ponds have frozen. And before the earth freezes and their sharp bills can no longer probe the hardened ground, the woodcock population of Moosehorn prepares to fly south. The wild geese are already streaming southward. And a young timberdoodle, solitary now that its siblings have gone separate ways, will soon be drawn to migrate with others of its kind. After wintering in the warmth of the south, it will return in spring to the woods and fields of Moosehorn to begin performing its own aerial courtship display. But its long journey is full of risks. The woodcock is a favorite game bird for thousands of hunters.
Okay, come on, you.
It presents an elusive challenge to man and dog alike as it holds still right up to the last second.
There's the point.
Not all woodcock will survive the migration south, but controlled hunting by humans is a minor limiting factor. The important thing is the preservation of their habitat. The timberdoodle seems a whimsical bird and has been accused of being designed by a committee. But its very oddity makes it unique, a remarkable contribution to nature's essential diversity. As with all forms of wildlife, the woodcock's welfare is important to our own. Often, the more unusual a creature is, the more we enjoy it. The much-studied American woodcock has many admirers who love it above all other birds. What intrigues me is that animal oddities, as different as they sometimes are, create balance in the environment. Let's cherish the uniqueness in all wildlife, such as the fascinating timberdoodles of Moosehorn. I'm Marty Stauffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stauffer, and this is northern Alaska, a treeless desert of ice and snow. This white wilderness forces animals to migrate or to adapt. Some stay white year-round. Others turn white with the coming of winter. Either way, you'll have to look closely. Nature has done an expert job of blending white on white. The climate this far north is too cold to support the growth of trees. The tallest plants are these stunted willows. Nevertheless, their twigs, leaves, and buds feed many creatures. Willow buds provide the main source of winter food for the willow ptarmigan. We think of cold and snow as equal parts of winter. But in the Arctic, cold is the enemy, while snow is a protective ally. For the ptarmigan, snow means survival. At night and during storms, the birds dig themselves in or just crouch and let it drift over them. In the morning or after the storm, the ptarmigan emerge from their snug shelter. Ptarmigan have adapted to snow in other ways. Feathered feet act as snowshoes and also conserve body heat. These members of the grouse family are white only in winter. In summer, their plumage is brown, and in spring and fall, it's mottled. This varying camouflage provides protection in all seasons. The short-tailed weasel, also called the ermine, is another creature whose coat changes color. In summer, it too is brown. The gyrfalcon has 3 permanent color phases. The birds are either white, gray, or dark. A white gyrfalcon stays white year-round, as do some other tundra animals. Like the gyrfalcon, the Arctic wolf stays white all year. distant wolf makes the ptarmigan nervous, but they seem to sense that danger is not immediate. The wolf would probably prefer larger prey, like doll sheep. But keen eyesight and sure-footedness keep the herd out of reach. Both ewes and rams have horns, but those of the ram grow much larger, curling like golden crowns around his head. Doll sheep are the only white wild sheep in the world. Closely related to the bighorn, they're at home on the icy crags of Alaska's mountains. Even with their advantages, they remain on guard. Far below, the lone wolf presents little danger to the sheep, but it's a major threat to the ptarmigan. This time, the ptarmigan sense a more serious situation. As the wolf draws near, the flock separates, and each bird searches out a hiding place. White feathers blending perfectly, the motionless ptarmigan become part of the landscape. In the Arctic, survival is often a matter of instinctive self-control. a ghostly shape approaches. An Arctic fox appears like a vision. Without its black nose and eyes, an Arctic fox would be practically invisible. To a collared lemming, however, the fox is very real. Lemmings are a major source of food for many creatures, and for the fox, they're essential. Fox populations rise and fall in unison with those of the lemming. Unlike the ground squirrels which live here, lemmings do not hibernate. They build extensive tunnels under the snow, where they feed on grasses and lichens. A lemming foraging outside its tunnel is at a much greater risk. Where there's one lemming, there may be more. The fox, like the lemming, stores food against a leaner time. As long as the keen-eared fox can hear another lemming moving under the snow, it continues to hunt. When the frightened lemming freezes, the fox leaves. The collared lemming is the only member of the vole family which turns white in winter. Also each winter, 2 claws on its forefeet become enlarged to aid in digging through snow. The severe Arctic winter forces each creature to migrate, adapt, or perish. White year-round, the snowy owl may migrate south when food is scarce, but it's well equipped to survive in the frozen north. Only eyes, beak, and talons show through a blanket of feathers. Like the fox, the owl depends on lemmings for food. And while many depend on camouflage, some Arctic animals, such as caribou, don't change color. Another is the muskox, with its thick, woolly coat. Size also has survival value. Cold climates favor bulky animals. As the herd moves through the lemming's tiny territory, its world of tunnels comes crashing down. In a rare moment, great meets small. That two creatures can be so perfectly adapted, yet so vastly different, is an astonishing reminder of nature's endless ingenuity. Many of the same creatures that are found north of the tree line in the Arctic are also found above timberline on mountains to the south. White feathers against white snow can help either the hunted or the hunter. The gyrfalcon is the largest member of the falcon family, and the one best adapted to extremes of cold and snow. Ptarmigan are its primary food. The gyrfalcon's flight looks effortless, as if evolution had done all the work, but the gyr is a powerful flyer. It often flies low to the ground to surprise its prey. long pointed wings make the keen-eyed gyr fast and agile. Ironically, a ptarmigan can escape only by holding perfectly still. A ptarmigan in flight is no match for the gyr. We humans might feel that the death of the ptarmigan is sad, or we might say that this bird was not a very smart member of its species and should rightfully feed the gyrfalcon. But nature does not make judgments for either side. The extreme conditions in this land of the midnight sun help us comprehend the great tenacity with which all life perseveres. The Arctic tundra, with its long winters and harsh climate, is, surprisingly, the most sensitive environment in the world. Man must take careful steps to hide his presence here. Perhaps he can be inspired to do so by the creativity which nature uses to camouflage the many animals that survive by being white on white. I'm Marty Stauffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America.
Come on.